And welcome back to Comment Frontline, everybody. I am Brant Fowler, aka the Gonzo Goose, back with you for another review. This one comes out of Boom Studios. It's WWE issue number 1. Now, you guys may recall that I reviewed the WWE Then, Now, and Forever one shot that was the precursor to this, and you can find the link to that video in the description below. If you recall, I had just a few problems with that book, with that issue, but with all that resolved now, and I understand what the tone of this book is and where it's taking us, I'm okay with this one. All right, so before I get into the review, of course, written by Dennis Hopeless with art by Serge Acuna, colored by Doug Garbark, letters by Jim Campbell. The New Day's Optimistic Odyssey Part 2, which is the 2-page backup story, I think it's 2 pages, is written by Ross Thibodeau, illustrated by Rob Guillory, colored by Taylor Wells, and also lettered by Jim Campbell. Several cover artists involved with this book. So, this one does pick up right after the last issue. That issue kind of introduced us to the Shield and then tore the Shield apart by the end of it. That's what that was, the setup for this continuing story of Seth Rollins. And that's where we're at. That's where we pick up where he's about to win the Money in the Bank, and then he has to sit on it. Now, you have to understand what they've established now with the tone of this book is that, yes, the in-ring stuff, it's on point with what you expect in a WWE ring. You hear you see narration throughout the matches, and kind of tells you what's going on in the minds of the competitors as they're wrestling, which is kind of cool. It's very it's got a very serious tone to it, but it's still got the fun and the theatrics of wrestling, which is part of why we enjoy wrestling. It's the athletics plus the theatrics. And with the backstage stuff, what I had a problem with in WWE Then, Now, Forever was that I was expecting something different. I was expecting them to break kayfabe a little bit and kind of take us behind the scenes, and they didn't go that direction. What they did was they maintained the personas, the character, behind the scenes. So it was like as if wrestling is real. What would go on? What are the motivations? What are the interactions backstage between these competitors and their bosses and in their outside of the ring lives? What would that be if the storylines that we see play out on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown and so on and so forth were real and they continued? And that's kind of what they established. And some of it's a little goofy, the Dean Ambrose stuff. I'll get into that with this issue. But overall, I can accept that. I can, suspend my disbelief and kind of go on this journey and enjoy this for what it is now that I understand what the tone is of it. So, in this issue, you see Seth Rollins rise to the WWE Championship, but also his frustration in kind of being held back by the Authority before he can get there. And this goes into stuff that obviously we never saw play out in the storylines, but maybe it's stuff that they discussed, maybe it's stuff that got cut from the plans and different things, whatever. I'm sure they're consulting in some way, but it's a fun and interesting kind of way to delve into it, because you have this stuff in the ring and out front in front of the crowd that as wrestling fans we all lived through and we all saw with Seth Rollins and the Shield. But then you go backstage and you see the kind of mistrust being planted between Seth Rollins and Triple H. You've got Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns, like, did you have to, was it worth it? Did you get really what you wanted by doing this? I got there without any of the Authority's help, without betraying my brothers. And Seth Rollins throughout this whole journey is kind of like, I'm ready to go, and Triple H is, no, I'll tell you when you're ready. And he keeps getting beat, and he's like, see, you're not there yet. And it's interesting what they did. They introduced Shawn Michaels here, and Seth Rollins was gushing over him, you're my childhood idol, yada yada. And it was Shawn Michaels who encouraged Seth Rollins to not wait for permission and just do it. And that's kind of what led him in this story to make that decision to cash in at WrestleMania on Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns and capture the world title, as we saw play out at WrestleMania 2 years ago. So, very interesting that they introduced that element, because Triple H and Shawn Michaels are very close inside and outside the ring. So I mean that's a very interesting element, and it's a very interesting parallel because Shawn Michaels in his career, if you know anything about wrestling, you've been watching for a while, you know that he was the same kind of character, whereas he had to break out of a tag team and go solo and kind of build himself up, and it was like he was almost there but could never quite get there until that fateful day at the Royal Rumble where he started at number 1, won the whole thing, and then went on to WrestleMania and captured the title. And that was kind of what cemented his legacy, and that's kind of the same thing that happened with Seth Rollins with the Money in the Bank. This cemented his legacy. And it was just interesting to see the fact that Triple H just kept holding him back, and then you had Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns kind of in there nudging, saying, you know, he doesn't care about you. At every turn, they just showed up, and they were like in his head. And then afterwards, Triple H comes up to Seth Rollins and is like, "Congratulations, champ," and then throws him up against the wall and is like, "You ever do that without my permission again, I'm going to end you." So let's talk about what's next. And it's just, it kind of shows the deeper seeds of their relationship that we only saw bits and pieces of kind of come out on television. And it's interesting that right now on TV, Seth Rollins has been calling Triple H out for weeks and wants Triple H because they're, you know, obviously on opposite sides now. And it's interesting that this book is now showing us all these other, you know, storyline seeds that were planted and things that were building up to what we're seeing play out on the screen. So it's very interesting in that way. The art, I think, is fantastic. I think the likenesses, while not dead on, they're really close, especially Seth Rollins and Triple H. They look so much like their real life counterparts. Shawn Michaels is pretty good too. Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose, especially Dean Ambrose, are a little bit off, but that's fine. They're close enough to where you know who they are, you can recognize them, and some of the other characters that appear in the issue too. It's fantastic art. They get what I've always had complaints about with wrestling comics is a lot of the times the artists aren't. They obviously aren't wrestling fans, and they draw the moves wrong, and the writing is calling a different move than the art is showing, and it always bugged me, but this one gets everything right. So I really appreciate that. My nitpick with this book, like it was in the other one of the nitpicks I had there, is Dean Ambrose. Dean Ambrose, now on TV, he's a lunatic fringe, as we say, and he's crazy, and he just pops up out of nowhere, and he's humorous and comedic, and he does these weird out of the blue things, but he goes a little too far in the book. Like Seth Rollins is swimming laps, and he just cannonballs right on top of his back. Just okay, that's just weird, and then shoves him into a vending machine. It's just to get it into his head. It's not for any purpose, so a little iffy with that. Now the backup story with New Day, honestly, last issue and this issue, I don't care about it. I like the New Day, but this is them time traveling, and they go back in time, and there's a dinosaur fight, and it's against a caveman who looks a lot like Ric Flair. And they even say styling and profiling and everything. But the interesting thing is, the next leg on their journey, they're going to the Attitude Era. Now that could be interesting. That could make it better. The art is fun, and it's kind of like a cartoon, which fits New Day's personas in the ring. They are kind of very colorful and over the top, and you know, they're full of comedy and full of life, and it kind of matches their whole tone and their whole thing. I mean, they got the cereal Budios and all this stuff, the unicorns, and it just fits. So that's fine. But I could do without it. I like the main story just as it is. So really, I think this was a step up from the previous issue, and I like where it's headed, and I like, you know, what they're doing with Seth Rollins in this, and with all this backstage stuff. Like I said, again, now that I understand the tone, just that backup story kind of takes it down a little bit for me. Dean Ambrose takes it a little bit down for me, but I am going to give this one a 4 out of 5. I thought it was a really solid issue. I really enjoyed it. And if you're a wrestling fan, I think this is a book you definitely want to check out. So that's my take on it. 4 out of 5 for WWE #1 from Boom Studios. Check it out. And also, if you are wrestling fans, next week, Chris and I, and maybe Michael, I don't know, will be doing not 1, not 2, but 3 live shows. based around wrestling. We're going to do live commentary over Monday Night Raw, which is the last Raw before the Royal Rumble. Then we're going to do live commentary over SmackDown, which is the last SmackDown before the Royal Rumble. And then this coming Sunday, this coming Sunday, we're going to do commentary, not this coming Sunday, but next Sunday, the 29th, we'll be doing commentary over the Royal Rumble itself. So 3 big live shows based around wrestling from Chris and I right here on Comic Frontline. So tune into those and check out all the other reviews and all the other content here on Comic Frontline. If you missed it, we had a full cast back on the live show as it returned this week. Go check it out at episode number 136. Join us every Tuesday night around 9:30, 10 p.m. Eastern. Next week it will be 10 p.m. or a little bit later Eastern because we have the SmackDown live show before it. But come join us. If you can't, watch it post live. And you can follow me on LastEmberPress.com. My channel, Brant Fowler. It's youtube.com/Brant Fowler. And you can check Lisa and I on What the Card along with Chris and Michael. We did a pack battle today, and tomorrow Lisa opens a Mewtwo 10, so you can check all that out over on youtube.com/whatthecard. So until next time, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.